In 2026, the very definition of a home in California is being rewritten. Millions of residents are waking up to a reality where a landlord can be sued for a missing refrigerator, while others are discovering their quiet suburban street has been legally cleared for high-rise development overnight. From AI-manipulated listing photos to hidden third-hand smoke toxins, the rules of the game have shifted. Whether you own property, pay rent, or are struggling to buy, these 10 legislative earthquakes are about to hit your doorstep. If you aren't prepared for the January deadlines, you're already behind. Number 1. The Essential Appliance Mandate, AB 628. The introduction of Assembly Bill 628 marks a fundamental shift in how California defines a habitable living space. Starting in 2026, a rental property is no longer legally considered fit for occupation unless it includes a fully functional stove and refrigerator. For decades, these items were treated as optional amenities that landlords could choose to provide or omit. However, under this new legislation, the absence of these core appliances is now classified as a habitability violation, placing them on the same legal level as running water, heat, and electricity. The primary driver behind this law is a growing body of scientific research regarding appliance poverty. Public health studies have demonstrated that tenants without reliable refrigeration are forced to rely on expensive, processed, shelf-stable foods, leading to significantly higher rates of nutritional deficiencies and chronic illnesses like diabetes. Furthermore, the lack of a stove prevents families from preparing healthy, cost-effective meals at home. By mandating these appliances, California aims to reduce the economic burden on low-income families and improve the overall health outcomes of its urban populations. For property owners and residents, the practical implementation of AB 628 requires immediate action. Landlords must now conduct a thorough compliance audit to ensure all provided units are in good working order before the 2026 deadline. If an appliance fails, the law mandates that repairs or replacements must be initiated within a strict 30-day window once notice is given. Tenants should ensure that their lease agreements reflect these requirements, as any clause attempting to waive the landlord's responsibility to provide these appliances is now considered void and unenforceable under state law. Number 2. Transit-oriented upzoning. Senate Bill 79, often referred to as the Abundant and Affordable Homes Near Transit Act, is set to redefine California's urban landscape starting July 1, 2026. This law effectively overrides local zoning restrictions within a half-mile of major transit hubs, such as heavy rail stations and high-frequency bus corridors. By creating a state-mandated floor for density, the bill ensures that cities can no longer ban multifamily housing in areas where public infrastructure is already strongest. In practice, this means that even land currently zoned for single-family homes or commercial use can now be developed into high-density apartments or mixed-use complexes without the traditional hurdles of local NIMBY opposition. The core of SB 79 is supported by urban planning research that highlights the symbiotic relationship between housing density and transit efficiency. Studies from organizations like SPUR and California YIMBY indicate that when people live within walking distance of reliable transit, ridership increases, traffic congestion decreases, and overall carbon emissions drop. Furthermore, by increasing the supply of homes in high-demand urban counties, the law aims to mitigate the state's extreme housing costs. The bill also includes strict anti-displacement provisions, prohibiting the demolition of rent-controlled units or any multifamily housing that has been occupied by tenants within the last 7 years. For property owners and developers, the law provides a clear roadmap for investment. Projects within 200 feet of a Tier 1 stop, like a BART or LA Metro station, are now permitted to reach heights of up to 95 feet with a density of 160 units per acre. To implement these changes, developers must ensure that at least 13% of units are reserved for lower-income households or 7% for extremely low-income residents. If you are a homeowner in an urban county, it is vital to check if your property falls within a transit proximity zone, as your market value of your land may have increased significantly due to its new potential for high-density redevelopment. Number 3. The Digital Truth Act, AB 723. Starting January 1, 2026, California will enforce Assembly Bill 723, a landmark piece of legislation designed to restore transparency to real estate marketing in the age of generative AI. The law mandates that any real estate broker or salesperson using digitally altered images to promote a property must include a clear and conspicuous disclosure stating that the image has been modified. This applies to any visual change that materially alters the physical characteristics of the home, such as virtually adding furniture, changing floor materials, painting walls, or even digitally removing unsightly power lines and neighboring structures from a view. The necessity of AB 723 is rooted in consumer protection research, which shows a sharp rise in real estate catfishing. Studies conducted by the Consumer Federation of California indicate that misleading AI-enhanced photos lead to significant buyer frustration and can even result in costly legal disputes over misrepresentation. The law draws a firm line between professional photo enhancements, like adjusting brightness, sharpening a blurry shot, or correcting white balance, and digital alterations. While standard technical fixes remain exempt, any edit that infers a condition or layout that does not currently exist triggers the mandatory disclosure. For agents and buyers, compliance in 2026 looks like a two-step verification process. If a listing features an altered photo, the agent must either post the original unedited version directly alongside it in the carousel, or provide a QR code or link that leads to a publicly accessible gallery of the untouched photos. For buyers, this is a powerful new tool. You now have the legal right to see the bones of a house before stepping foot on the property. Failing to provide these original images or the proper digitally altered label can result in fines up to $1,000 and potential disciplinary action against a professional's real estate license. Number 4. Cash Transaction Transparency, FinCEN. Effective March 1, 2026, a major shift in federal oversight will hit the California property market through the FinCEN Residential Real Estate Rule. This regulation marks the end of anonymous high-value property acquisitions by requiring that all non-financed, all-cash transfers of residential real estate to legal entities or trusts be reported to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. While California has seen similar geographic targeting orders in specific counties like Los Angeles and San Francisco, this new rule is permanent and statewide, covering everything from single-family homes to 4-unit apartment buildings, regardless of the purchase price. The logic behind this mandate is rooted in national security and financial research. Data from the U.S. Department of the Treasury indicates that residential real estate has historically been a primary vehicle for money laundering, with an estimated $2.3 billion in illicit funds laundered through U.S. property between 2015 and 2020. By requiring the disclosure of beneficial owners, the actual humans who own or control at least 25% of the entity, the government aims to pierce the veil of shell companies. This transparency is intended to deter criminal actors and foreign oligarchs from parking illicit wealth in the California housing market, which often distorts prices for legitimate buyers. Here we see a diagram of the reporting cascade for real estate professionals. For those involved in a closing, the practical impact is a significantly more rigorous documentation process. The responsibility to file these reports typically falls on the settlement or escrow agent. If you are buying a home via an LLC or trust, you must provide the agent with the legal names, birth dates, and taxpayer identification numbers of all beneficial owners. To avoid delays, the California Association of Realtors has introduced Form FRRPA, which should be included in purchase agreements to ensure all parties provide this data within 7 days of a request. Failing to comply can lead to civil penalties of up to $5,000 per day, making transparency a non-negotiable part of the 2026 closing process. Number 5. Tobacco Residue Disclosure, AB 455. The passage of Assembly Bill 455 makes California the first state in the nation to treat third-hand smoke as a major environmental hazard on par with lead paint or asbestos. Starting January 1, 2026, sellers of residential properties, 1 to 4 units, are legally required to disclose in writing any actual knowledge of past smoking or vaping on the premises. This isn't just about a lingering smell. The law specifically targets the chemical residue that embeds itself into the home's infrastructure. Whether the smoking occurred 10 years ago or last month, if the seller is aware of it, they must now check a new box on the Transfer Disclosure Statement, TDS. This legislative shift is grounded in groundbreaking medical research led by San Diego State University. Studies have identified that third-hand smoke contains over 250 toxic chemicals, including known carcinogens like nicotine-derived nitrosamines, NNK. Unlike second-hand smoke, which clears with ventilation, these toxins bond to drywall, carpets, and HVAC systems, re-emitting into the air for years. Research shows that infants and toddlers are particularly at risk, as they often come into direct contact with these contaminated surfaces while crawling or playing, leading to a higher intake of toxins compared to adults. For those in the middle of a transaction, the practical stakes are high. Once a buyer receives this disclosure, they have a 3 to 5 day window to rescind their offer without penalty if they are uncomfortable with the property's history. Sellers who failed to disclose known smoking history could face significant legal liability for actual damages, which might include the high cost of professional remediation, often involving specialized ozone treatments or the total replacement of flooring and drywall. If you were preparing to list a home, it is wise to be brutally honest about past usage to avoid a lawsuit long after the keys have changed hands. Number 6. Disaster Recovery Rights, SB 610. Senate Bill 610, officially signed into law to take effect in 2026, introduces the most comprehensive protections for California renters ever established following a natural disaster. For the first time, the law explicitly defines the duty of a landlord to handle the invisible aftermath of a disaster, such as wildfires, floods, or earthquakes. If a rental unit is affected by a declared state of emergency, the landlord is legally mandated to remediate all hazardous debris and secondary damage, including toxic ash, smoke residue, mold, and water damage, before the unit can be deemed habitable again. This removes the gray area where tenants were previously pressured to return to homes that smelled of smoke or contained hazardous air quality. The legislation is a direct response to environmental health research showing that disaster-related contaminants, like wildfire ash, often contain heavy metals and carcinogens that can persist indoors for months. Under SB 610, a property is presumed uninhabitable as long as disaster debris remains unless a local public health official certifies it as safe. Perhaps most significantly for the tenant's wallet, the law discharges the obligation to pay rent during any period of a mandatory evacuation. Landlords must also return any prepaid rent for the days the tenant could not occupy the home within 10 days of the evacuation order being lifted. For residents, the most vital gem of this law is the right of return. If you were displaced by a disaster, but the building remains standing, you have the legal right to reoccupy your unit at the exact same rental rate you were paying before the catastrophe. Landlords are prohibited from using a disaster as an excuse to reset the rent to market rates or permanently displace long-term tenants. Practical tip: to protect your rights, always keep a digital copy of your pre-disaster lease and take time-stamped photos of the damage. If your landlord fails to clean the unit or refuses your return, SB 610 grants you the right to withhold rent or sue for damages in small claims court. Number 7. HOA Fine Caps, AB 130. Assembly Bill 130 has sent shockwaves through California's 50,000-plus homeowners associations by stripping boards of their power to levy exorbitant, budget-breaking penalties. Effective now and fully enforced through 2026, the law places a hard cap of $100 per violation on most governing document breaches. Gone are the days when a homeowner could face thousands of dollars in fines for a non-conforming garage door or an unapproved paint color. This legislation marks a fundamental shift in the balance of power, moving away from a system that critics argued allowed HOAs to find their way to foreclosure and toward one that emphasizes reasonable correction over financial punishment. The drive for AB 130 was fueled by socioeconomic research indicating that excessive HOA fines disproportionately impacted middle and low-income residents, often triggering a cycle of debt that led to the loss of generational wealth. Legal experts pointed to cases where minor infractions snowballed into massive liens due to compounding interest and late fees, both of which are now strictly prohibited under the new law. By limiting the financial teeth of an association, California aims to protect homeowners from retaliatory or arbitrary enforcement while ensuring that the primary goal of an HOA remains community maintenance rather than revenue generation. For residents, the most practical gem of AB 130 is the mandatory opportunity to cure. Before any fine can be imposed, the board must give you a reasonable window to fix the issue. If you cure the violation or even submit a financial commitment, like a signed contractor's quote to prove you are fixing it, before the disciplinary hearing, the HOA is legally barred from fining you. However, a critical health and safety exception remains. If a board can prove in an open meeting that a violation, such as aggressive pets or fire hazards, poses a risk to the community, they can still exceed the $100 limit. As a homeowner, your best move is to document your repair progress immediately upon receiving a notice to trigger these new protections. Number 8. Electronic Security Deposits, AB 414. Starting January 1, 2026, Assembly Bill 414 brings California's rental accounting into the modern era by making electronic refunds the legal default. If a tenant paid their initial security deposit or any portion of their rent through digital means, such as Zelle, Venmo, ACH transfer, or an online portal, the landlord is now required to return the remaining deposit using that same electronic method. This law eliminates the common check is in the mail delay that has historically left tenants waiting weeks for funds needed to secure their next home. By aligning the return process with the original payment method, the state aims to ensure that move-out funds are accessible to residents as quickly as possible. The shift toward digital returns is backed by financial transparency research from the California Apartment Association, which found that paper checks are the leading cause of security deposit disputes. Checks are frequently lost in the mail, sent to the wrong forwarding address, or subject to bank holding periods that can stretch the legal 21-day return window into a month or more. AB 414 also allows landlords and tenants to agree at any point during the tenancy, including at lease signing, to receive the mandatory itemized statement of deductions via email. This reduction in physical paperwork not only speeds up the process, but creates a clear, time-stamped digital paper trail that protects both parties in the event of a legal disagreement. For those living with roommates, the law introduces a critical gem regarding multi-tenant households. By default, if there are multiple adults on a lease, the landlord must issue one single payment made payable to all tenants. However, the real practical benefit of AB 414 is the ability to contract around this. Tenants can now provide a written agreement at move-out, instructing the landlord to split the refund into individual electronic transfers. To make the most of this law, tenants should ensure their designated account information is updated in their resident portal at least 30 days before moving out. Landlords who fail to offer an electronic return when required can be held liable for statutory damages of up to twice the amount of the deposit if a court finds they acted in bad faith. Number 9. Pre-approved housing plans, AB 1206. Assembly Bill 1206, set for full implementation by July 1, 2026, represents California's boldest move yet to eliminate the bureaucratic red tape that has historically stalled residential construction. This law requires every local agency, from major cities like Los Angeles to small rural counties, to develop a program for the pre-approval of housing plans. These aren't just for backyard cottages. The mandate covers both single-family homes and multifamily buildings containing up to 10 units. By providing a library of blueprints that have already been vetted for structural and building code compliance, the state is effectively creating an off-the-shelf solution for housing development. The legislative push for AB 1206 is backed by economic research into the holding costs of California real estate. Studies from the Turner Center for Housing Innovation have found that the discretionary review process, the period where a city can debate the aesthetics or minor details of a plan, can add $10,000 to $50,000 to the cost of a single home in permit fees and interest alone. Under the new law, if an applicant chooses a pre-approved plan, the local agency is legally mandated to approve or deny the permit ministerially, without a public hearing, within 30 days. This standardized path bypasses the lengthy California Environmental Quality Act (CEQA) reviews that are often used by opponents to block new projects. For homeowners and small-scale developers, the gem of AB 1206 is the accessibility of professional architecture. Most cities will be required to host these pre-approved plans on their public websites, often alongside the contact information of the original architects who can be hired for site-specific modifications. Practical tip: before hiring an expensive custom designer, check your local planning department's pre-approved gallery after the 2026 deadline. Using one of these master plans not only slashes your architectural costs, but virtually guarantees a faster construction start, which is especially critical for families trying to rebuild quickly after a natural disaster, or those looking to turn a single-family lot into a small, income-generating multiplex.
Number 10. The Balcony Bill Final Deadline, SB 721. The countdown to January 1, 2026 represents the final compliance deadline for Senate Bill 721, California's mandatory inspection law for exterior elevated elements. This law applies to all multifamily residential buildings with 3 or more units that feature balconies, decks, porches, or entryways supported by wood and elevated more than 6 feet above the ground. Originally slated for 2025, the deadline was extended by Assembly Bill 2579 to account for a massive shortage of qualified inspectors. By 2026, every applicable building in the state must have a certified safety report on file, or the owner faces severe daily fines and the potential for the building to be declared a public nuisance. The urgency of SB 721 is rooted in the tragic 2015 Berkeley balcony collapse, which claimed 6 lives. Forensic investigations by structural engineers revealed that the collapse was not caused by a single event, but by years of undetected dry rot and fungal decay within the wooden support joists. Scientific research into these silent failures shows that improper waterproofing can trap moisture inside the structural envelope of a building, allowing wood-destroying organisms to eat away at the core of a balcony for years without any visible signs on the exterior. Because of this, the new law mandates invasive or direct visual inspections, often requiring inspectors to use borescopes or create small exploratory openings to see the hidden load-bearing components. For property owners and tenants, the practical consequences of this law are immediate. If an inspector identifies an immediate hazard, such as a railing that would fail under pressure or a sagging support beam, the landlord must restrict access to the area and notify the local building department within 15 days. For non-emergency repairs, owners have 120 days to apply for permits and another 120 days to complete the work. Tenants should be proactive. If you live in a multi-unit building and haven't seen an inspector by mid-2026, you have the right to request a copy of the safety certification. Owners who fail to comply are not only liable for fines of up to $500 per day, but may also find their property insurance canceled, as many providers are now making SB 721 compliance a prerequisite for coverage.
As California enters 2026, the landscape of property ownership and residency has been fundamentally transformed. We are moving away from an era of handshake deals and vague habitability standards into a period of strict digital transparency and mandatory infrastructure. Whether it's the requirement for a working refrigerator under AB 628, the end of anonymous cash buys via FinCEN, or the final safety deadline for balconies under SB 721, the message from Sacramento is clear. The state is prioritizing safety, accountability, and density over traditional property rights. For the millions of Californians navigating this great housing reset, the key to survival is proactive documentation. Landlords must pivot from being simple rent collectors to becoming compliance managers, ensuring every appliance is audited and every balcony is certified. For tenants, these laws provide a powerful new toolkit to demand healthy living conditions and secure their financial rights after a disaster or move-out. While these 2026 mandates introduce new costs and layers of bureaucracy, they also offer the potential for a more stable, transparent, and equitable housing market for everyone. If you found these insights valuable, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to stay ahead of the rapidly changing California landscape. We want to hear from you. Comment below with which of these 10 laws will impact you the most in 2026. Are you a landlord preparing for an appliance audit or a renter relieved to finally have a fridge? Your experiences help our community navigate these changes together. For more deep dives into California real estate and legal tips, click the link on your screen to watch our next video.